Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Taco Society Presents. Sydney and Phil are off tonight because we have a special episode for you. We went down to Bristol, Rhode Island in the NECON convention, which is a genre horror writers convention that's held every year. And we covered the release of their anthology, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I won't go into too much because we talk about it in the show and I don't want to bore you. So please give it a listen and we'll be back for episode 2 soon. Thank you. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Taco Society Presents. We have a special show for you today. We're at NECON in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Portsmouth, Rhode Island, Bristol.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're here at the Bay Point Inn.
The Bay Point Inn and Conference Center, run by Roger Williams University.
And we're here for NECON. And why don't you give us a little bit, this is Matt Patel, by the way.
Filling in for Phil and Sydney, so
yeah.
I'm sorry I don't have Sydney's hair. So
There's a lot of things that you don't have that, well, you don't.
and something that I've got that she doesn't, but let's not talk about it. Let's try to keep the show somewhat okay.
We'll try.
I know last year's NECON, the television studio, had a little bit of problem with the language.
We did. We're going to try to...
I'll try to behave.
You will?
I'll try.
Okay.
No promises.
We've got two cameramen with knives here, so if they start throwing them at you, you're going to know.
Oh, okay. Well, is that where all the blood splatter
blood.
came from?
Yes.
Of course. So this is live, sort of, on tape, from NECON 37.
And you're going to explain what NECON
37 years, NECON, the Northeastern Writers Convention, otherwise known as Camp NECON, because someone once said, and no one remembers who, it's like summer camp for writers, and it stuck. It is, in my humble opinion, but I'm not wrong about this, the best speculative fiction convention there is. Bar none. It is capped at 200 people, so it's very intimate, as our good friend Christopher Golden has been known to say. It is the one convention where there's no table between the author and the fan. You will have a late night hot dog and conversation about writing, movies, life, basically anything, with best-selling authors and amazing cover artists and new writers who are just sold their first story, and fans who never want to write anything but want to read everything. Yeah. And everybody just gathers.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's a great time.
We call ourselves the NECON family, and it's not a platitude. Yep. It's absolutely genuine, and that all goes back to our founder, Bob Booth.
Yeah, the Booth family, yeah.
To Bob and to the entire Booth family, absolutely.
And this show and the show following this, depending on when you watch the shows, is set up to celebrate the release of an anthology from the NECON group called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And
right there. And
we're going to talk to the editors in a minute, but just give us a little bit of background on the.
For years before he passed, Bob wanted to do a charity anthology and donate all the proceeds to the Jimmy Fund, because that was his favorite charity, closest, nearest, and dearest to his heart. And Lord knows he's not alone in that. It is Christopher Golden's favorite charity. It is Stephen King and the whole King family's favorite charity. For those who don't know, but since I think most of your viewership is around New England, they should and would, the Jimmy Fund is the pediatric cancer research arm of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and they literally work miracles. They are amazing, and
great.
I mean, you can't tune in to any Red Sox game and not see the Jimmy Fund logo plastered all over Fenway Park. They are, and this was long before, we lost Bob to lung cancer in 2013. He was passionate about the Jimmy Fund long before he was ever diagnosed. Yeah. So, I don't want to steal too much of the thunder from the editors, because some of this is their story. So we're going to talk to the editors right now. In fact, it's Trish Kasich and Laura J. Hickman, and we'll be back in seconds. I'm not going anywhere.
And we're back. We're here with our first guest, Trish and Laura.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are the editors of the anthology.
We are. Yes, we are.
And you're the head honcho of the anthology.
I prefer the term publisher. Yes,
well, head honcho sounds so much more.
It does.
Can I do Grand Poobah like
there
the
it goes.
Flintstones? I can get a huge buffalo hat.
Yeah, that would help with the reflection.
Okay.
And we're off.
Yeah.
So tell me, Laura, what was it like editing your last anthology?
Actually, it was a bizarre and fun experiment in excitement.
Terror.
Yes, this was my first.
My terror.
You've
I've
done others.
I've done a few, yeah.
And I'm so grateful I had someone who knew what they were doing because
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Trish is amazing and fun, and I loved working with her. And we really didn't fight over the stories that much. There were a few.
There were a few. We both read, and then we get together Skyping. You know, so I'm a Luddite, so Skyping is kind of like I killed a chicken and got the machine to work. I have no clue. But we say, how about this story? Well, yeah, I like this one. How about this one? There were a few that none of them were bad. And we had no bad stories, which was really hard for us because you get
was
bad
so
stories.
tough.
Yeah. But because this was for pediatric cancer, we had to walk a very tight line.
Yeah.
There were some stories that had a child die. There were some stories that were not appropriate. Some poems that just, the child would not have had a problem. They understand what's going on. We didn't want the parents to have to go through that.
Yeah.
And it was a little hard, so there was one, a beautiful story, just a beautiful story. Can't remember the author because I know the stories now. We got to know the authors at the last.
It was completely blind submissions. We had
Yeah.
no idea.
I can verify this because I ran the submission email account. So I would get the stories, I would remove the bylines,
Okay, I was gonna
log
ask you
who
to
wrote
explain.
what in an Excel document, and then send the stories to them blind. So I hand to God, they had no idea who wrote
And what's
what.
the reason for blind submissions?
That was my choice.
I loved it, I'll be honest.
A lot of anthologies, because you need to sell anthologies, have names. I wanted this to be open. I wanted the story to count, not the author's name. Of course, if we had a Stephen King, yeah, write it. Yeah, not a problem, not a question. But I wanted the story to count.
And
So when we got the names, it was like, oh my God, you know,
there were like, I was like, wait, this person wrote that?
you know.
Or, no, that person never could have wrote that. And
You've told us what would constitute not making it into
Yeah.
the anthology. What would make a story acceptable for an anthology?
We wanted,
Can
okay,
you mean this anthology?
This
one,
yeah, that's what
And,
I'm
and just to be clear also, because Trish talked about the fine line that they walked, this is not a YA anthology.
No.
It is not there's a, reader discretion advised message, because it is dark. It's horror. They are horror bedtime stories. Now that being said, please answer Tony's question.
when I presented this to the group last year, was it only last year?
yes.
Yeah.
Only last year.
It was 365 days ago.
Yeah,
basically.
Moral of the
Lord.
story, editing an anthology ages you in dog years.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
But I said, scare us. Make us not want to go to bed after we read these stories. We want to turn the lights on going, oh, looky, infomercials. I want to watch this all night.
Give me the shem wow.
And there
Anything.
were some stories. There were some
yeah.
that, I was like, oh God, there was one story. I'm going, did King write this and nobody told us? It's like, it's that good. And I love doing anthologies and helping other writers because I love finding jewels. It's kind of like, I hate this person. I love this story. I want to write it, but it's just, wow. It's magic.
If I can jump in, one of my favorite things watching, because I kept completely out of the creative
He
process.
did. You had nothing to do with it.
I was strictly the legwork and the grunt
Yeah.
man. All editorial decisions were
Though
Trish
you
and
knew
Laura's.
the names of the
Though
authors.
I
He knew.
But it was great to see, because we did solicit from certain authors who are, you had to be a NECONer.
Yes.
I mean, that's a staple of all NECON ebooks publications. You have to have a link to NECON. But, they still read them blind. So, of course, we'll talk to some of these people. One who's sitting over there across the room. Hi.
Or there's somebody say, I sent you this story. It's called.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Then it's like, oh wow, a big surprise. She wrote an amazing story. It got a yes. But then other people, it's what I learned from this project is just how talented the 200 people gathering
yes.
and enjoying each
Yes.
other's company
That's
every
good.
year.
Yes, as I said, there was not a bad
because
story.
No,
and you're
everything was amazing.
And then the stories ranged from good to jaw-dropping, oh my God. And
And-
some of them you're like, really? she's that good of an author? He's that
Oh
good of
yeah,
an
there
author?
were
It's
times
this
I was like,
wonderful
no, that
surprise
person,
that it's
no.
like,
Yeah. I never knew.
We're gonna
Yeah.
wrap this up here now.
Okay.
We've only got a few minutes. We have so many authors to.
Oh,
talk
yes,
to.
and you're gonna hear some amazing stories.
Well, and that's what I
Parts
want to.
of amazing
We're gonna
stories.
wrap this up by saying, what was each one of you? What was your favorite story in the anthology?
Look at the titles. Again, we don't know, we can't remember.
There's a few that
The
stand
others.
out. I had a couple of favorites, I'll be honest, that just totally blew me away. I'll be honest, one of them, Wishing Well, we both fell in love with that.
By?
By Richard Dansky.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
bury the lead. Don't just give the offers.
And I'll be honest, your story, Tony, Blue Stars. I told you this after I found out it was you. We have a mutual friend who's an amazing author named Mercedes Yardley, and I swore she wrote the story. It read just like one of her stories, in my opinion. And she is one of my favorite new and upcoming
One of mine
authors.
also.
And again, hand to God, I can verify that she's not just sucking up. That's how much she
Yeah.
loves you.
No, we had no idea, and I'll tell you, that made it actually easier because I didn't read a story and go, oh, that's so-and-so who I love. I have to put them in.
Yeah.
I didn't know,
Yeah.
Oh no, you guys rejected some of your very best
and
friends.
it broke our hearts.
Yes, and we found out, oh, God.
What was
help us.
one of your favorites?
Again, I like Blue Stars, and I was worried because of the death image,
yeah, but it was
you know,
beautiful.
but I said, Laura, help me. Yes, okay, okay, you know. Okay, the one story I thought was written by King was 1, 2, 3 Red Light by Gregory L. Norris. I thought that was a King story.
Greg Norris, great guy.
Because
Yes.
it
Great
was,
author.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this going, this is how he writes. This is
Yes.
amazing. And God, there's so many.
I
Jeez.
just wanna- I
I
love.
have to actually look at the titles because I can't remember.
Okay, can I interject
Yeah.
one here that I have to say because obviously and unfortunately he's not here, but the wonderful Catherine Patasek,
Yes.
who was Charles L. Grant's
Yes.
widow, said any Charlie story you want to reprint.
So all of
have.
us
So-
ran through, and I found one,
and she
and
found
there
one.
was, it's an amazing story. I couldn't remember reading before, and then I read it again, going, yeah, that
That's
works.
excellent.
Jack
you know,
Ketchum
there's-
also gave us permission to do
Yes.
any reprint that we
Okay,
wanted,
and we got from Jack, we have Mother and Daughter.
which is just an amazing, sweet, bizarre, sad story.
And from Charles Grant, we have The Old Men Know.
This-
So-
I haven't read it yet, believe it or not.
Oh, you're,
I'm in
yeah.
for a treat. so.
Great reading.
I can't thank you enough for including me, obviously,
Oh.
and I can't thank you enough for coming down and sitting with
Well,
us.
we
thank
we
you.
did not know it was you, but you wrote a great
Yeah, you did.
story.
Thank you. I
And that
appreciate
was the important thing, the story, not the person.
Yeah.
Although he's great.
it. I'm turning red. Okay.
Oh, good.
We've got a lot of people to follow up with these two wonderful people, and we'll be back in a minute. We're back with our next guest, Corky Skinner.
Hi.
Boy, I tell you, he's I love affection for Courtney, and not only as a friend, but as a illustrator. I just absolutely love your work.
Thank you, Tony.
And we're here specifically to talk about the anthology. But tell us a little bit about what you've done in the past for your own sales and for other people.
Oh, gee. Well, I've been illustrating professionally now for 40 years, so I've illustrated just a wide range of everything: horror, science fiction, fantasy, history. What else?
Portraits.
Yelling to my wife,
Portraits.
Elizabeth. I've done portraits. I've done a few commissioned portraits.
You've done some remarkable, and I'm entirely stealing from your wife because Courtney is an official NECON legend this year, and so his wife will be here in a second. Wrote a terrific appreciation.
Yes.
That was just programmed in the published in the program book. Talk about the things you've done for film because I never knew this, like title sequences and
Some great stuff. That's,
yeah. Just I wasn't surprised because, like Tony, I've been a huge admirer of your work. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. He'd do something that weird, that quirky, that creative.
That's why I do things. If it's quirky, weird, and creative, then I'll be
You're the
interested.
guy. Yep.
I'm the guy. I've done there's a little cult film called Lost Skeleton of
Love
Cadaver.
it. Yeah, love it.
And it's had a sequel, and there have been other films by the same director-writer, Larry Blamire. He did the I'm
Trail of
blanking.
Screaming Forehead,
Trail of the Screaming Forehead, that was the
Saw that
one I
too.
did the title sequences to.
Yeah.
Dark and Stormy Night.
Dark and Stormy Night. I did full size portraits done digitally so I could send it to the West Coast. They had it filmed or printed out and framed and put on this set. Kind of creepy portraits lining the walls of a broken down mansion. I've done, prop design, prop building.
Well, how about, I remember the year you brought it, talk to us about your contribution to the epic movie, Evan Almighty.
Oh, effing almighty. That was a huge production, the most expensive comedy film, probably the biggest bomb at that level of budget.
I'm sorry, I love Steve Carell, but that's
And-
neither here nor there.
And he was great meeting him. I actually did a painting on set. They wanted people looking like they're tourists gathering around this full-size, actually built on-site, full-size Ark, Noah's Ark at full scale. And so they had people selling T-shirts and selling balloons, and they asked us, my wife Elizabeth Massey and I were there just as extras because it was right in our neighborhood. It was a lot of fun to do, kept us busy in the summer. And they just wanted people there looking like they're local tourists. So they said, anybody here an artist who could be like painting a painting of the Ark? Yeah, I am. So went out, brought my easel and my paints, and for a couple of weeks there I was on set painting the full-size Ark. They had animals there, some were CG, but they had giraffes and llamas, elephants
Amazing.
live on set,
Yeah.
walking in front of me. I've never had models like this live in front of me. And so I did a full-size painting of the Ark with all the animals in front of it. And I made a print of it and gave it to Steve Carell the last day of filming, and the director, Shadyac,
Yeah, Tom Shadyac.
Tom Shadyac. And that was just fun. Being paid and being
Was
fed.
even better.
To be on set all summer. It was great fun.
Let's talk about this cover and how
No.
it originated.
And it's a wrap.
I want to talk about elephants. Okay, go ahead.
Tell us about it. How'd you come up with it?
Well, it was interesting hearing Laura and Trish and you guys talk about this, because everybody had to be very sensitive because of the Dana-Farber Jimmy Fund. So I had to be, it's horror, it's bedtime, but you have to stay away from a certain edge because of the book, the type of book it is. But I also wanted to get something that had to be a very plain, very noticeable, obvious reference to the title. And it's sort of a children's reference in the title. Now I lay me down to sleep, of course. But the most obvious thing is, it's hard to see unless you really close in on it, is just a skeleton, classic horror theme, a sheet, which is, naturally the sheet over the body is, and the bed and the bedroom. And so it was just a matter of balancing those elements and making it interesting, balancing it with the type of the title. And basically that was it. And the wonderful thing is I have my lovely wife, Elizabeth Massey, who has a story in here. And I noticed I got to the end of the painting. It's a digital painting, painted with digital brushes, digital paint. I approach it a lot like I do a regular traditional
What program do
painting.
you use that in Photoshop?
I use Painter and then Photoshop, going back and forth. Basically, I can adjust things as I go, which is a wonderful thing you can't do with paints. So, for instance, the way the skeleton looks silhouetted against the sheet over it is a matter of different filters and all this other technical stuff. And you can just go back and forth until you get something you like. And just as I finished it, you have the basic skeleton in the bed glowing from underneath. And it still needed something, and I couldn't figure out what it needed, and which is why Beth came in and I said, "What does this need?" She said, "How about I think you said a ghost,
Ghostly Shadow.
ghostly shadow." So it's a little subtle to see on camera, but kind of arching across the entire room is a large shadow. Who knows where it's coming from? Who knows who's casting it? Who or what?
We can fill that in.
Exactly. And that's what the whole thing is. There's no story to this. This has no reference to any story in the book. I never read any of the stories. I'm looking forward to read this. But it's a sort of standalone cover that needs to capture
It
the...
sets and conveys the theme.
Exactly.
What I love about that cover,
Perfect.
and you don't really notice it, I didn't notice it until now, the hand is human that's sticking out. The rest of it is a skeleton, and that's such a focal point for my eyes.
Oh, good.
You know, when you look at it, and the juxtaposition of the real flesh against the skeleton, it got, you know, you felt it. I said, wow.
Good.
That's great.
That's an element. I wasn't sure if that was going to be
Oh, I
picked
think
up
it works
that way.
perfect.
Oh,
That
that's
was
good.
brilliant, yeah.
And that's actually Elizabeth's hand.
And we'll see her hand in a few minutes.
Yes.
Yes.
Not her skeleton, just her hand.
One last thing, what do you got coming up? Was there something you're working on, a project? Or?
Yes, I'm finishing up a cover for Craig Shaw Gardner's book. Yay! Temporary Human, and it's a trilogy.
Is
and
that a
it's
sequel? Because you did one for him last
temporary
year.
hauntings,
Temporary Monsters.
monsters, and they're just crazy. It's a strange, crazy book. It's you'll have to see the cover. It'll give you some sense of the book inside, but it's hard to capture his writing. But I'm trying to with the cover. You know, a cast of thousands, things flying around. It's just a lot of fun to do. What else do I have coming up? I have no idea.
Other things.
I have some historic stuff coming up. I'm painting for a client in Boston, a painting of the Revere statue against the
No,
Old
okay, that's
North
cool.
Church.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I've done did a wonderful, fun painting based on history of his fifth great-grandfather, who was captured by a pirate in the Caribbean. So I did a lot of research for that, and ships firing cannons and all that. So
Busy
a wide
man.
range of stuff.
Well, thank you very much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to talk
Thank
to
you.
us.
I forgot to shake the
Great
editor's
cover,
hands.
great
Thank you.
cover,
Thank
yes,
you, Tony.
thank you.
Thanks, man.
And we'll be
Thank you,
back
Corey.
with Courtney's wife, Elizabeth Massey. We're back with Elizabeth Massey, who is a friend of the show. Yeah, you
I
were
am.
on, I want to say 2 years ago now.
Yes, down at Nancy Calanta's
Nancy's
house.
house, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good time. I
It
think
was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and so if you want to know more about Elizabeth afterwards, just go back in the archives and take a look at one of the Virginia shows. She was great on that.
Well,
In
thank
fact,
you.
were quite the storyteller, and I hope we see that again, 'cause she is going to read for us. But let's start talking a little bit about you.
Oh, okay.
Just a little bit about your background, and then we're going to go into this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What do you want to know?
Who is Elizabeth Massey?
Well, I'm a writer. I've been writing full-time since 1994. Primarily horror, but I write all sorts of different things. I write historical fiction, educational materials, nonfiction, poetry, but horror is my beginning, and I continue really enjoying it. That seems to be a big draw. I really enjoy
I screw this
scaring
up.
people.
Wire Mesh Mothers.
Wire Mesh Mothers.
Fantastic book, but
Thank
my
you.
favorite of yours, and again, I'm terrible with titles. Hell House,
Hellgate.
Hellgate. Why do I always want to say Hellgate? Love that historical
Thank you.
fiction, horror. It
Thank
was
you.
Absolutely a great read.
Yeah, even though I'm a Southerner, there's something about Old Coney Island that completely catches my attention.
What draws you there?
Well, the fact
Why?
that, first of all, creepy little amusement parks are always fascinating anyway. But the fact that that was back when there were no regulations on food or rides, no safety regulations. So kind of, there were so many potential, so
Things
many
that could go wrong.
Things that could go wrong, and yeah. So I was really fascinated with that.
You
So
did a great job.
Hellgate is set there. I think
Yeah.
it's in 1909 is when it's primarily set.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your story in Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep.
Okay.
And then you're going to read from it, but give us a little bit of background.
Well, the story's titled Wired, and as someone who grew up in the South and grew up in pretty much the country, small town country, a lot of my stories are set in areas like that, where there's a lot of fields and forests and mountains, and so this story, just having gotten my leg caught in barbed wire before, kind of was the beginning of this. So what would happen if?
Oh, geez.
So that's how that got started. This guy is
Here's in the back of my neck.
this guy is all alone, and he ends up trapped in barbed wire. But as the story goes on, you find out why he is, how he got there, and what happens to him.
You have a question for Elizabeth before we read?
No, get started, please.
All righty.
I don't want to follow that, so
Okay.
please leave it in.
Okay. Homer couldn't move. It wasn't that his muscles were weak or tired, it was the blasted wire. Not regular fence wire, the kind used to define backyards or surround gardens, but barbed wire. Old, rusting, tangled barbed wire, a huge mass of it that at one point had served to define the perimeter of a hilly pasture land. Damn it. He lay panting on his back, caught in the wire beneath the trees at the far edge of the Pattersons' farm, his face turned to the side, his right arm, which felt unnaturally hot, beneath him. Sharp metal teeth cradled his scalp and bit into his arms, legs, and torso through his jeans and his shirt. How the hell did this happen? How careless am I? Cattle grazed nearby, thick-bodied black Angus with bright eyes and damp noses. They sniffed the pasture grasses, drew in blades with their tongues, and flicked flies from their flanks with filthy tails. "Hey, stupid bovines!" Homer shouted. "Can you get me out of this?" The nearest cow turned her huge head in his direction, huffed, and looked away. With the fingers of his left hand, Homer could feel the smooth stock of his shotgun on the ground beside him. He had not let go of it when he tripped over the stump and fell headlong into the barbed wire. He'd cursed as he went down, envisioning himself diving free of the vicious wires, even as his body slammed into it full force. He landed in the brutal tangle, knocking his breath out for a full minute, during which he lay, his lungs hitching, staring at a twist of metal barb just an inch from his face. A ladybug crawled to the top of one barb, then flew away. Homer's breath regained. He held still and considered his situation. Okay, I can get out of this. I just gotta be careful and take it slowly. The barbs felt like claws of ice in his skin, but the heat in his right arm continued and concerned him the most. First thing first, get your damn arm out from under you, then you can pry yourself loose. He gritted his teeth. He drew a deep breath. Just do it. He lifted his shoulder as far as he could and then tried to lift his arm. The pain was excruciating. White hot glass shards slicing up and down the nerves from elbow to shoulder. He bore down against the pain and let his arm ease back where it had been. Clearly, it was broken. Maybe it was a compound fracture. He wasn't sure. He couldn't pull it free to have a look, and he couldn't reach it with his other hand to test it. Though at this point it wouldn't make any difference, he had to get out of the damn wire. I can do this. I can do this.
I want to interject here because I think we're going to have a theme. It's, obviously, not only are you a spectacular writer, you are a spectacular reader.
Yeah, stumbling over.
No. There's that internet meme that goes around. If you think reading is boring, you're doing it wrong. And you are a long-time and beloved performer here at NECON in the talent shows and in the roasts. And I have a hunch we're going to be in for a lot of treats this afternoon.
One of the best readers I know.
That is,
Oh, well, thank you.
it is.
Thank you.
You didn't. Yes, that was spectacular.
Well,
hearing your
thank
words
you,
come out
sir.
of your mouth.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you so
Thank you.
much for taking the
You're
time
welcome.
to sit and talk
You're
to us
welcome.
and our audience.
Always an honor.
And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to what's next.
Oh, well, I'm working on a new novel which should be done hopefully by the end of this year called The House at Wyndham Strand. It's a horror young adult novel set in, on an island in South Carolina,
Oh, boy, that sounds
and a
good.
couple of short pieces.
Good. We look forward to all of it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back in a minute. We're back with Eric Nunnally. Eric's a good old friend of myself and Matt's, and just a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
And this is your first time on the Taco Society, right?
It actually, yeah, it is.
He lives so
It's
far
about time.
away. It's about
I
it is
do.
about time.
It's
We've
about
talked to him before, and he says, I got to take a train, I got to take a plane, I got to do something to get there. And so we'll work it out somehow.
It's
So
a
we
no
came-
man's land in the northern wasteland. You know.
Yeah, well, we came to you this time, but you still have to come back on the show sometime, do a full interview.
I would. More than happy to.
Good. When the sequel to Blood of the Sun comes out.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of work getting that sold.
Yeah, well, let's hope it happens.
I'd like to sell up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, the slow pitch softball, but don't you have some good news on that front? Unless Facebook was lying to me and to everyone as far as selling a novel recently.
And yes, I sold a novel to Cheesy.
Oh, you did? That's fantastic.
I did, and it's going to be a little while coming out because it was it's
A
very
lot of
early
editing?
stages of development.
A lot of editing and
Well, I still have to do a lot of
Oh,
editing.
okay.
You know, I barreled through to the end, and now I got to go back. It's like combing hair. You know, you just keep going till all the
what?
knots are gone.
What? I
You
don't-
may recall. You may recall. Laura understands.
Yeah.
Let's, well, congratulations, that's fantastic.
thank you.
And hopefully we get you onto that.
Sure.
Let's talk about Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you approached it.
I wrote this story. Well, a lot of it is based on the prompt. How we didn't. The call wasn't for anything that was too crazy, and it's an idea that had been bouncing around in my head for a while because I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I've created a lot of direct mail. And a lot of junk mail comes to your house, and a lot of it seems really intrusive and insistent. And I wondered what it would be like if a postman actually stood between you and that junk mail, and what that might be like.
Boy, that's
And
interesting.
that's
Yeah.
where the story came from. Yeah, and I wanted to contribute to this because my daughter, when she was 4, she had cancer, and she was treated at the Dana-Farber
Oh, wow.
Institute, and
Wow,
yeah, she's been 5 years survivor, and
Good for her and good for you.
yeah, she's doing great. And so anytime something like this comes up to contribute to Dana-Farber in some way, I'm
You're
more
there.
than happy to put something in. Yeah,
That's fantastic, that's great. Now, how about reading a little bit?
sure thing. I will. I'll censor this as best I can because the mail is a bit malevolent. Good morning, Mr. Jahinga. Here's your mail. Oh, thank you, Dave. The old man smiled and waved, pleased that the postman had just delivered mail from Bangladesh. Liar. What about me, dipstick? You gonna just leave me in this bag? Dave struggled not to respond to the voice. Instead, he hissed, hoping to quiet the ugly sounds emanating from his mailbag. Oh, what's that, Dave? Nothing, just a sneeze coming on. Well, you take care then. Have a good day, Mr. Jahinga. Yeah, you can go to heck, Mr. Postman, you bag poop. The voice sang a line of sarcasm before moving to full contempt. If Mr. Jahinga doesn't get access to this very special credit score service, your butt is mine. Take the offer to him. Take it! Heading down the walk, the back of his neck red with frustration, Dave reached into his bag and pushed the surly letter into a pocket deep at the end, his eyes never leaving the postal truck at the end of the block. The rest of the mail in that special pocket understood that they weren't going to be delivered. The rest, short stacks of paper, malignant and hostile, shifted ominously at Dave's hip. Having delivered mail in this area for a little over a decade, Dave knew more about the customers on his route than they realized. He knew who worked from home, who didn't, what hobbies they had, and where they went on vacation. He knew more about their mail than they realized as well. Conversely, what little they knew of him was about all there was to know. At the end of his shift, he dropped a heavy canvas backpack full of mail into the trunk of his car. The backpack came empty with him to work and left full every day. This message is for Janet Kozlowski and Janet Kozlowski alone. You tell her she is dead when I'm delivered. Do you hear me, you pith hat wearing jerk? Dead. Unless she contacts us for a free sample of prednisol. Now. He slammed the trunk, crawled wearily into the driver's seat, and drove directly home with nothing to look forward to the next day but duty and vitriol. Keeping the people on his route safe provided nothing more than headaches and a paycheck.
Wow. That's, I want to read the rest of that story. That is excellent.
Yeah.
And I have to point out, as one of your story, the Easter eggs jumped out at you. Mr. Jahangar, Javed Jahangar, hasn't been back to NECON in a few years, but he's a former NECONer, and Jan Kozlowski is another former longtime NECONer. So
Everybody gets this stuff, so it's
so
a great
nice,
opportunity
nice
to
shout
name drop
outs,
a bunch of people.
nice
Yeah, yeah.
subtle shout outs to more NECONers and getting more family members into the anthology. So
And I didn't kill anybody.
That's always important to the people you mention. Well, thank you very much. That's an excellent story so far. I can't wait to read the rest, and good luck on that novel.
Well, thanks for having me
Always
on,
a
Tony.
pleasure.
Matt.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Tony.
You got it. And we'll be back with the Wu-Tang Clan in just a minute. We're back, this time with Bracken MacLeod, brother, friend, and a friend of the show. He's been on at least twice.
Yeah, twice before.
Twice before, so this makes the third time. He's welcome back.
I'm happy to be here anytime you guys want me.
And you guys know each other for
Very well. Last,
7 years
7
now.
years.
7
Yeah.
years.
Yep.
Fantastic. One of the nicest guys in the horror genre.
You're going to ruin my reputation.
Oh, jeez. From what I understand, that won't take much.
Right? No.
Well, and I will brag about you because I do consider you one of my dearest friends in the
Thank you,
genre,
brother.
and you, sir, are blowing up.
Oh,
You
yeah,
are
I've had a good year.
Stranded, Bram Stoker nominated, 13 Views of the
yeah.
Suicide Woods, just out from
Cheesing, yep.
I never pronounce that right.
Come to Dust.
Come to Dust.
Probably
from
his
Maelstrom-
masterpiece.
From Maelstrom Books, which was dedicated to Bob Booth. Papa NECON and had a piece about Bob in there that more than choked me up. It was as beautiful as the book. And we do these goofy one-line bios that are completely fabricated for everyone in the NECON program book. Yours was actually 100%
I haven't
legit.
gotten a chance to read it yet.
Your bio is he wrote the only book in the horror genre that Mary Booth read this year, and that was Come to Dust.
Nice. Oh, that's wonderful.
It
Yeah,
was
so-
excellent. One of the, we did a panel this morning on the best books of the last year, and Come to Dust was right
Oh,
up there.
yeah. I'm sorry I missed that. My wife dropped in for a moment, so I couldn't get into the panel.
Yeah, we're going
because
to
I wanted
talk to
be her.
Heather about interrupting you during these things. She's becoming a real pain. to be
Yeah,
honest
I
with
know,
you.
right? Just 23 years and
Yeah.
hard to live with. Not true. She's
Yeah,
wonderful.
she's beautiful. She's a wonderful woman. Tell us a little bit about your story into the anthology.
So my story is it's a fun thing. I've had this idea for a very long time. I had published a story on a website called Everyday Fiction, and the name of the story is Leave Here Alone. And it's about a woman who goes to dinner, and her dinner date goes really badly. And I won't spoil the story. You can read it for free on Everyday Fiction. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to do it as a triptych of stories. I wanted to do, there's Leave Here Alone. The story that's in this book is Leave Here Alive, which is a prequel. It talks about how she got to the point where she is in that. And then I'm going to eventually do a third story, which is called Leave Here Always, which will pick up where this leaves off.
Will you put those together into like a chap book? Or
I don't know. Yeah,
something
since the
small,
third one isn't written yet, I don't have a plan yet. But yeah, I'll probably do it as a small chap book, that we'll just call Leave Here with an ellipsis. Leave here, ...
Do we know enough from what you gave us to hear you read and get a picture, or do you need to tell us
Oh
more?
yeah, no, I don't think this needs a lot of setup.
Okay.
It's a camping trip, so we'll just.
Okay.
I used to be a very avid camper, and we'll just
Yeah.
dig into it.
Dying to hear it.
I forgot my glasses. Over the soft crackle of the campfire, she could hear birds overhead and the fast rustle of tiny chipmunks scurrying behind her in the debris of the forest floor. The scents of pine needles and moist earth were heavy in the air, competing with the smell of burning birch and ash. The campfire burned hot and clean, sending up only the barest wisp of white smoke that wavered like a white ribbon in the air. The smell drifted over to her and tickled her nose, making her want to sneeze. The spring day had been pleasantly warm when they had hiked into the secluded spot together, but now that the sun was setting, a chill had descended, giving her goose flesh and shivers. The fire was hot, but the rope held her in place at the edge of the campsite, and she couldn't come closer. The logs glowed with the same wavering orange as the collection of mostly consumed coals filling the rock-ringed pit. The rich smell of the fire drifted over to her, sparking memories of being a child in the woods, helping her father collect wood while her mother prepared the campsite kitchen. Later, she'd snuggle up to Mom and listen while Dad told stories behind the crackling dance of light and darkness she'd helped him create. Those were her favorite memories of childhood. When they all got away as a family and Dad wasn't working late and Mom wasn't stressed out about politics and the news and there were no buses rattling their house or car alarms chirping and screeching in an obnoxious caricature of birdsong. The woods were their refuge, and in adulthood she'd enjoyed them less and less as the demands of school and then work kept her in the city. So when she'd seen avid outdoorsman in his online dating profile, of course, she'd clicked. There was something about a man who knew how to find the best wood, start a fire with a single match, cook a meal over an open flame, and when they went out on their first date, he was charming and intelligent, and he talked about the forest in a way that made her heart beat faster. On their second date, he still treated her like a gentleman and respected her boundaries. He was funny and had taste. He was pretty but not delicate. And so, on their third date, when he'd asked if she'd like to spend the weekend camping with him, in a couple of weeks. Yes came so easy. It sounded like heaven, and gave her the chance to pull out the gear she didn't use as often as she'd liked, because she rarely had the time, and it never seemed as much fun by herself. He set his poker in the embers and stood, pushing into the small of his back. He let out a groan of pleasure at the feeling of straightening his knees and stretching spine after having crouched down for so long. Gazing out over the rock cliff 20 feet in front of him, he sighed and said, "I told you it was beautiful here. Don't you think so?" He talked like he hadn't trussed her up with her arms bound above her head, a taut line slung over a branch pulled so she danced on her tiptoes.
Jeez. You sucked me in completely. Sucked me in. Oh my God.
And you're great at that. You are great at the totally set you up and then yank the carpet out.
Well, that was excellent. As always, very good job.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's always a pleasure to hear you read, too.
Oh, thank you very much.
I told Beth that she was one of my favorites, and so are you. Excellent. Yeah, great job.
I love to do it, and I love to be on the show.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And and I just want to say thank you guys for for doing this book. This is such a fantastic
We
thing. Yeah.
did this book, all of us, and not just the people who are on camera here today. This would not be without all of NECON. And
Absolutely.
so thank you.
Thank you, and you got to come back soon. On the
I
show.
will, whenever you want me.
You got it. Thank you. All right, we'll be back in a minute with our next guest. We're back. This is like old home day for me. There's so many friends and brothers, and I'm. If you know me, I love the horror genre, and I love the people, and this is one of the men that I absolutely look forward to meeting every single time.
Well, thank you,
Jim
sir.
Moore. Probably one of the oldest. I say oldest. I've been reading Jim forever. Your old horror novels just thrilled me to no end, and I think
Thank
I've
you
been
kindly.
a fan. Well, we've been talking for well over 10, 15 years. And now that you've branched out into fantasy, I mean, I'm just as excited when I read your stuff.
Well, I do horror too, just not quite as much or as quickly.
Well, your fantasy is just as good. And
Thank you, sir.
And it contains so many elements of horror, it's almost like reading horror. So I just love it. And the Seven Forges series and the new series you have out. And we'll talk a little bit about that,
But you're rocking on the T-shirt, correct?
the last
Tides of War,
Sacrifice.
Last
The Tides of
Sacrifice.
War, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about the Tides of War.
Well, it all started while I was watching TV one day, and I think I was watching an old King Kong rerun. And I got puzzled by the fact that every time in these old black and white movies, the heroine gets stolen by the evil savages who are going to sacrifice her to a god. And then the hero comes along and saves her, and nothing ever happens. I always thought, why don't the gods get ticked about that? So that's the story I decided to write. It's the story where a man tries to save his family from being sacrificed and fails, but blows the sacrifice in the process, and the gods get ticked and decide to end the world.
It was
Fickle
listed
gods.
as one of the best books released of last 12 months.
Which is incredibly flattering to me, and thank you.
Oh, it's excellent. I can't talk about it enough, and so I got to stop. But you're here to talk about the anthology, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what went into writing it?
Well, I didn't have a chance to write a complete original story. I took one from a very limited edition book that was done on Bruce Springsteen called Darkness on the Edge. And my story is called Darkness on the Edge of Town, and I wanted to write a ghost story because I always thought that title was perfect for one.
Sure is.
Now, that was from PS Publishing,
Yes,
right? Peter
PS
Crouch.
Publishing. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I looked at mine exactly once and then very carefully put it away, never to touch it again.
They do great work, and their books are like, they're
Just
art.
beautiful, yeah.
They're yes.
How about reading for a little bit for us?
I'd be glad to.
Great.
Or if you want to sing it in your best Bruce voice, you could do that too.
I wouldn't besmirch the man that way.
Fair enough.
I saw Tony Chambers when he came into the bar and knew he was trouble. Nothing new there. Tony had almost always been the sort to think with his fists and talk with the sole of his steel-toed boots. He was white trash, and not all the money in the world was ever going to change that. Not that he was anywhere near close to rich. Tony had grown up in Reeves Mill, same as me and damn near everyone around us. It wasn't a great town, but it had its good points. Strictly a blue-collar place where most of the men fixed their own cars and walked with a pack of cigarettes rolled into their sleeve of their t-shirts like it was a badge of honor, like their dads had done before them. That hadn't changed much, even after the laws about smoking in public switched to just say no mentality. The difference was Tony always had a chip on his shoulder about it, like he was supposed to be better than what his life had given him, and it offended the hell out of him. He had a brand new car until he couldn't make the payments anymore, and then he bought a piece of shit from one of his neighbors and worked on it until it ran smoothly. He had a fine new house up in the Heights, but that went away too when he couldn't make the payments. That was pretty much the story of Tony's life, and it was a story he hated with a passion. There was only one thing that made the whole mess tolerable for him, and that was, not too surprisingly, a girl. Her name was Teresa. Teresa went to school with me and Tony and all the rest of the losers who never made it out of the mill. She was German-Italian with porcelain skin and auburn hair, hazel eyes, and a body that was about as perfect as it could get. She was also, to be kind, as high maintenance as most of the muscle cars in the area. And she was Tony's as long as the money was good. And that was the problem. I don't know exactly what sort of sales Tony was in, but he was good at what he did, and for a long time he made cash and a lot of it. Either the sales were dwindling, or he got stupid with investments and gambling, or maybe even both. 2 years he'd been with Teresa, and he'd never been happier, and then everything changed.
Wow. There's a line you just read that just sent shiver. It's not even it describes the scene perfectly. She was with him as long as the money was there. You know, talk about characterization. It says everything right there. It was great. It was
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Excellent story. I can't wait to read the rest of it.
I blame
the fact you say
Springsteen. I blame Springsteen. He certainly inspired me when it came to that particular tale.
Well, the next time I see Bruce Springsteen, I'll have to pass along your thanks to him. Well, thank you very much. Again, another friend of the show, and
Always.
hopefully you'll be back on and talk about.
Anytime you want me.
We gotta have
It's okay, it was
another
focused
big
on Tony.
extravaganza. What's that?
It's like, you left me hanging. I was like, there.
Well, thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and we'll be back with our next guest in a minute. We are back with another special guest,
Another friend of the show.
Another friend of the show. You're already picking up the
Oh,
lingo.
it's,
You're coming quick.
yes, I feel like I'm hitting a groove here.
Yeah, you're fitting right in.
But I'm not, because I totally missed the memo that it was Haverhill House Shirt Day.
Oh,
Because-
yeah, see.
And which one of these is not like the others? But
Well, this is my brother here, John McElveen. I love the guy with all my heart, and he's an exceptional author, now an exceptional publisher. And we're going to talk a little bit about your publishing before we get into your work. And we were just reminded that the last guest we had, James A. Moore, has a new book out through Haverhill House. Want to talk about that?
Him too.
Him too, that's right.
and while we're at it, I understand congratulations are in order, because didn't you just strike a deal to publish a novel from someone else at this table as well? So,
Yes, it's
Yeah.
a tight-knit family.
but
here.
since Jim
Yeah.
skedaddled already, let's talk about Dinner for One.
Yes, Dinner for One is a very heartfelt journal that Jim kept after Bonnie passed away.
His wife.
Yes, Bonnie's wife. And it's
And the full
Emotional.
title is Dinner to One, A Journey to Healing.
Dinner for One, yes, A Journey to Healing.
It's a remarkable book. I've read, he published this in segments on the internet, on his
Yes.
blog, and it talks about how lonely and what he went through for the years, I guess, following his wife's death. I can remember literally crying, having tears,
Right.
reading some of this.
But there's also humor infused in it, because it is Jim and a lot of heart and Jim's trademark kind of rough edged.
Yep, yep. And as we mentioned, monochromes and other stories.
Yes, my short story collection, but we can get more into that when I have my 5 minutes
Yeah, we will.
on there.
And Jim, and Chris Golden. You've got some Chris Golden stuff coming out.
Yeah,
Golden
and I
and
have
Benson.
Seven Whistlers with Amber Benson and Chris Golden is already out, and forthcoming, I've got actually 17 projects on the plate, so.
Amazing.
Well, that's also, and of course, Haverhill House put out your novella, Got Your Back.
Well, that was just my playing around to get the feel of doing it again.
Using yourself as a test dummy. It's
yes.
still a heck of a piece, though.
Thank you.
know,
Thank you.
And just to talk about your own work, and we've got Dave Dodd from Crossroad Press here.
Who's published us.
Yes, also. You got, for horror aficionados that everybody knows, Hannaware. You're the author of Hannaware. It was up for a Stoker. Almost got it.
I'm sorry, the robbery was caught in my throat. There.
And you got Inflictions, short story collection through
Yes.
Crossroads.
Yes.
Crossroad Press, yeah.
They-
Great press and
they-
two great books.
And an excellent cover artist as well.
Yeah, you did a great job. Well, I think we should get back on track now.
And so let's talk about See, I'm learning. Can you tell us a bit about your story in the anthology and set up to read a segment?
Sure.
You can go now. I got this.
Nina is a very short story, but it was based on. I'm like a rat. I like to investigate old buildings, and when they're between the decisions to either demolish it or to buy it and revive it. And there's a set of mills in Haverhill, and I decided to go and hunt around there, and I actually creeped myself out because I had gone to, I think it was the 5th floor, and walking down the hallway, it was pretty much pitch dark, except there was a light coming from one room. And it turned out just to be the street light outside that had somehow got through, past the wood covered windows. But I freaked myself out, so that's where.
That's where the story came
yes.
from. Why don't you read us a page?
Alrighty. I'm not sure where to start on this, but.
Sometimes the beginning works.
No, on that, because it's kind of a workup, and it does. All right. Okay, the hallway stretched for nearly 200 feet in front of her, but the slowly fading flashlight only lit the first 40 or so in the boarded-up darkness of the building. Treks like this intimidated Andrea when she first started evaluating older properties, but she found there was never anything in her pepper spray that her pepper spray couldn't handle. If the pepper spray didn't work, she could always revert to the 9mm Beretta she kept tucked in the small of her back. Fortunately, it had never come to that. She moved down the dusty hallway, stepping lightly, testing for weak spots. A rot-through could mean a fast 10-foot descent. The smell of urine, booze, and rotting food that had assaulted her upon entering the building faded considerably after the 3rd floor. The 5th floor only offered a lonely smell of desertion. Counting doorways, as was her habit, a reference act not unlike Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumb trail, she continued down the corridor, but stopped in front of Unit 518. The door was closed, which wasn't unusual, but Andrea could swear she heard singing from inside. She had heard plenty of mournful renditions in other abandoned buildings, but they were usually the drunken lamentations of the homeless, inebriated, or any other mixture thereof. This was feminine, airy, and beautiful, unmistakably a child's voice. She moved closer, almost resting her ear on the door while her flashlight played across the floor. The voice was much clearer now, accompanied by music and very distinctly live, not a recording or radio. Andrea reached out, gently pushed the door. It opened with a click that echoed through the 5th floor, betraying the claustrophobic confines of the darkness.
Claustrophobic is right. Jeez. Great story. I
thank
can't
you.
wait to read the rest of it. None of us have read the story. It just came out now. The anthology is the first time seeing
Well, not
it.
to brag, but I have. But that's the benefit of actually being the leg man who put together the layout of the
head
book.
honcho. Well, thank you very much, John.
Well, thank you for having me here, and
Oh man, we gotta
I
get you
always,
back in the show.
always
again,
love the
too.
Taco Society too.
And this was not said, but a pillar of NECON. Like there would not be NECON without you and his.
I wouldn't go that far, but
30-something years, right?
32. This is my 32nd NECON.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much.
You got it.
All right,
Love
we'll
you
be
guys.
back. We'll be back with our next guest in a second.